My name is Peggy Lagodny, and I'm a worship associate of this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. It's good to be with you this morning. Welcome. We come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of our biggest questions. Welcome. We all come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whoever you love, know that you are welcome here. And now for some announcements. In this morning's email, there's a link to the order of service if you'd like to open that. Keep it handy. It has the words that we all say together throughout different parts of the service, as well as the lyrics to the hymns we're going to be singing. And let's see. The rescheduled food and necessities drive from the Martin Luther King Day of Service is a collaboration between Shaker Scouting and Shaker Heights PTO Community Builders. It was canceled due to last Monday's snowstorm, but has been rescheduled for Saturday, January 29th. The drop-off time is between 2 and 4 p.m. at the Shaker Heights Middle School, 20600 Shaker Boulevard, Shaker Heights, Ohio. And now, if you would join me in the words of the chalice lighting. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and love, and to help one another.
We are called to worship today by the words of Forrest Church, who wrote, "Each of us, of course, must assume the responsibility for others may be responsible for our being born lives. How deeply and intensely is our responsibility and ours alone. Having accepted life as a gift for ourselves, we are then charged to revere the presence of this same gift in others." May we revere the presence of one another as we gather virtually today in worship. And I remind you that you can say hello in the comments below if you'd just like to greet one another virtually this morning. We're now going to sing together "Wake Now My Senses," led by Mike and Pete Clapham.
and praise.
Transformed by our care. We come now to the part of our service where we share our joys and concerns with one another. I invite you to share in the comments any joys that you'd like to lift up, or any concerns that you have that you would like to share with our community. We always hope that by sharing our joys, they are magnified, and in sharing our burdens, that those are lessened. And I will just speak in some concern for Miss T, who is experiencing lung restoration and getting some autoimmune issues under control. And a word of celebration for our 6 participants in Our Whole Lives that we have beginning their journey this month. What else do you want to lift up to this community? We'll have some time to share as Mike plays. stone for the joy or concern shared online, and a stone of gratitude for our team here that continues to make adjustments in the moment so that we might be able to hear one another clearly. And a stone for those joys or concerns that have not yet found words to express them.
Well, good morning. I'm so sorry to not have any voices really present to respond to that, but I hope you all are having a good morning. We are in week 4 now of Chalaka. Week 4 is big. It's a big week. It's an important week. Perhaps one of the most important of the principles, because it's one of the closest ways that, as you use, we get to that idea of sort of we could call it capital T truth, or the idea of something that is meant to give our life and our experience a sense of meaning, which is prioritized here in a way that reminds us how important it is for us to be truth seekers and truth tellers. It's a very serious, very important set of principles here. And it's a tall order for me, speaking for my task today. In fact, it's a little intimidating, actually, to think about how to convey something real for our congregation, reflecting on this principle in a way that educates and inspires those who are here to worship. Certainly what I'm always aiming for here, week by week. And I've let y'all in on the process a little bit, because weirdly what happened this week is that the process of coming up with today's reflection is actually the thing I have to share with you all, weirdly. Because this is such a big idea, it was such a big concept, but I weirdly stumbled into some interesting answers along the way. So my approach for this week, thinking about how to talk about truth, I wanted to find an unconventional angle. You're always looking for some interesting way to talk about things, some different approach, especially this concept being a searcher after truth, that seeker after wisdom. Was there some way to kind of come at that from a different perspective? So naturally, I ran to the history of the world's religions, because if you want to find something engaging and really something that's going to grab your audience, you really can't go wrong with medieval Byzantium and like Russian Orthodox spirituality. They're very cheery and very engaging over there. But this is actually really helpful, because there's this extraordinary motif in those traditions, and they come out in other places as well, where some of the most revered and sort of holy people were always said or described to be holy fools, almost like holy clowns, we kind of call them. Basically, sort of saintly people who lived intentionally absurd lives. These were people who broke social norms on purpose. These were people who challenged the prevailing wisdom. The whole idea was that they were showing that the way to truth could come by laughter and unseriousness, rather than through sort of mystic speculation or sort of deep theological investigation. This idea also evolves like in Islam. There's a tradition, a well-known line of teachers who would use sort of satire and these over-the-top kind of expressions to sort of personify the idea that we should think about pursuing the truth and gaining wisdom as something that is really contrary to what our serious instincts. There's also, of course, the tradition of the laughing Buddha. Now, of course, many scholars will note correctly that that's kind of a conflation of the Buddha and this Japanese god of prosperity, but there is a long-standing motif in the Buddha's sayings that are all about kind of being lighthearted and funny. That's good stuff, right? That's good content. Saintly figures. The world's religion is showcasing them to talk about ways to search for the truth in less serious ways. That makes for a good reflection, right? That's good material. We don't only have to look to stone-faced figures, many of whom make up, that early America pantheon that you sometimes have to pull on. So look, some funny faces in the crowd is not a terrible thing. What actually happened to me as I was getting ready to put all that together was where the lesson came for me. And it became very clear that my whole idea wasn't actually the best example I could come up for what I was trying to do. Because another example was right in front of me, and I just hadn't noticed it. And the answer was my dog. See, who's the fool now? So you see, this is how this happened. I'm literally sitting in my kitchen. I'm reading about these saintly figures, these holy people. But I kept getting distracted by my dog, who is underfoot, sort of in the kitchen. Now, the thing I have to give you as a little bit of history or background is my dog is a dachshund, so he's very low to the ground. And he's also was very, very sick some years ago. And while he was sick, he actually lost sight in one of his eyes. So we had sort of a half-blind dog for a little while. And then just this past year, in a completely unrelated thing, completely unrelated phenomenon, he actually lost sight in the other one of his eyes. So now he is actually completely blind. But he's also new to being blind. And he's also a dog and a dachshund. And if you know anything about dachshunds, they're very assertive and they're like not going to be held back. So a little blindness is not going to stop him from getting around the house. That's not going to do anything. So my wife and I've gotten used to it, and there are times when you can really see him get ahead of himself. I mean, he runs into things all the time, but it's like no problem for him. He'll like knock on like a cabinet door thing here and there. Without a doubt, the most funny thing is like the doorbell will ring, and if the door is here, he will run to the other side of the house and start barking in a corner because he's sure that that's where the people are coming from. After seeing enough times, it of course gets really funny, but the other thing is that it actually gets like really admirable because nothing is keeping him from exploring and knowing his world. This is mostly the case when it comes to finding food, because of course, as a dog, that's the most important thing in his life. But now he can't see, so the only way for him to be absolutely sure that there isn't food around is to just snout the entire house. It's like he has this like doggy fear of missing out, and even though he can't see anything anymore, he's actually become like more of a searcher, because it's as if he's just sure there's an entire roasted turkey on the ground somewhere, and it's just out of view, and he just needs to get to it. And that's when I realized that like my dog is the perfect holy fool. He's the best example I could think of for what it really means to live out this fourth principle, because my dog has so much faith. There's food out there, he just has to find it. When he lost his eyesight, his response was to search all the harder. He definitely stands up along the lines of these other holy fools I was looking at. Alexander of Constantinople, the Mullah Nusradin, who I was reading about. My dog is in the other room demonstrating what an earnest and urgent search for truth should look like. A blind dog with all the faith in the world that a morsel of something delicious is just a snout's length away. So I find that to be a really great example, because the idea of the optimism and the indefatigability of this creature who just needs to keep searching, that is an image I can definitely bring into my own life, for at least how I would like to be a searcher after the truth.
As we enter this time, which some call prayer and others call meditation, take a moment to quiet your mind, open your heart, take a deep breath, and let your body relax. Our meditation this morning is by Kimberly Ann Tomsek Carlson. Feel the gravity of the earth holding you in place. Wiggle your toes as if they were roots. Roots connect you to the earth, lending you strength. Gently sway in the wind, turning your body like the trunk of a tree, leaning this way and that, bending as the air pushes and pulls. What surrounds you may sway you, make you bend and feel unbalanced. Wiggle your toes. Know that your roots can hold you as you grow and learn. A tree is nourished by the soil and water. You are nourished by food the earth grows and by the water it provides. You are cared for and loved by many people. Breathe deeply. Still yourself. Know that your roots are strong. Wiggle your roots. Our offering this morning is going to the Milestones Autism Resources. Milestones Autism Resources improves the lives of autistic individuals by educating, coaching, and connecting the autism community with evidence. They provide strategies for life, offering guidance to get through day to day and help plan for the future. They understand the challenges and needs of the autism community because they live it every day. They improve lives through education and evidence-based strategies for school, home, community, and at work. They envision a community in which autistic individuals reach their full potential as contributing members of society, recognized for their strengths and supported in their challenges. You can donate via our Cash App. Our account is $UUCC 44122, or you can send a check here to the church and reference Milestone in the memo link. Please give within your means as you are able, and thank you for your generosity.
The words for our acceptance of gifts is in the order of service that you've hopefully been following along with. As you find that, I just want to remind you that these gifts are one of the primary ways that we live out our principles in the world around us, and it does make a difference in our community. Last month, I received a very grateful phone call from, because our gift of difference to their education and for returning citizens. And I am confident that your gifts toward Milestone's autism resources today will be equally gratefully received. So, our acceptance of gifts, please read together. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world.
Our reading this morning is by Richard S. Gilbert. In the midst of the whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, in the frantic pace of life, pause here for a moment. Catch your breath, relax your body, loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Do not hurry to mold this masterpiece. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in process, and always there is more to be done. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business.
Does this make me too short? I am not sure that I put on deodorant before I left the house today. I mean, I think it's part of my daily routine. I think I did, but there were a lot of things going on, and I'm not completely sure, and I can blame a lot of things that happened this morning for that. There was snow on the road, the snowplow hadn't come through, and I was thinking I probably need to leave a little early just to make sure that I have plenty of time to drive safely. I could have gone to bed a little earlier last night, so I can blame all the things that kept me up late so that I didn't have quite as much time as usual today. I could blame that there were some things that were happening this morning that I had on my mind. There was a fantastic adult religious exploration program on the 8th principle this morning that I wanted to be at. The stewardship team was meeting this morning, and I think about it even if I'm not going to be there. And so I can blame a lot of things for why I may not have put on deodorant this morning. But at the end of the day, I'm the only one responsible for that. I can blame a lot of things outside of myself, but if I forget to put on deodorant, that's on me. That's my responsibility. And this may seem like a trivial thing, And it is today because we're, 6 of us in the sanctuary this morning and we're socially distanced. Maybe people think that it's my way of enforcing social distance not to have put on deodorant this morning. But if I can't take responsibility for this little basic thing about my daily routine, it's going to be really difficult for me to take responsibility about bigger things in my life. And our principle that we are celebrating today is in our 4th Sunday of Chalika, we are exploring the principle that we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now, I have to admit, this is a really privileged principle. This principle comes out of a place of having all of your basic needs taken care of and being able to focus on a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. There are some people in the world for whom their basic needs and the basic needs of their family occupy all of their thinking and all of their time and energy. So to think about a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, it implies that we've got some other things handled in our lives. For some, the most essential truth is, I need to feed my family and keep them safe. And I want to acknowledge that right off the bat. There are also some things to be said about people in marginalized communities who experience systemic oppression and are less free than others, less free than some of us, to engage in a meaningful search for truth. They're not helpless. I don't want to suggest that. People in marginalized communities are not helpless. They've done amazing things. We can look at stories of people who have come from oppression and accomplished and created amazing things. They still seize opportunities to take responsibility for their own searches for truth and meaning. I'm just acknowledging that it is more difficult for some people than others, and we might take that for granted sometimes. One of the things that I'm thinking about just off the top of my head is, we're partners with the Greater Cleveland congregations, and one of the things that they have done is they have gotten some organizations together to engage in collective bargaining, so that one organization that might have experienced some oppressive fees for some of the things that have to get done can unite with other organizations, and together they can get a better bargain for the stuff that has to be done that doesn't necessarily accomplish their mission, like waste hauling or utilities, security services, insurance for their organization. So individual organizations that might not have a lot of power all by themselves can take responsibility for collaborating with others to set the best possible deal for some of these basics that they need, so that their resources can be most wisely directed toward the services that they want to provide for others in our community. Now, they could say, well, we're not free to decide what we pay for our waste hauling. We're not free to just set the price on that. We've got to pay whatever they tell us we've got to pay. But instead, they took responsibility for connecting with other organizations in the same sphere and saying, how can we do something better? How can we care for the people in our communities more responsibly? How can we be better stewards of the resources that we have available to us? It makes me wonder if the things that keep us from being free in our lives are also the things for which we avoid responsibility. Think about it. Where are the places in your life? Where are the places in your search for truth and meaning where you feel least free? How much responsibility are you taking for those areas of your search for truth and meaning? Same question, different way. Who or what do you want to blame for the world not being what you want it to be? Who or what do you want to blame for your relationships not being the way you want them to be? Who or what do you want to blame for your life not being the way you want it to be? We say we want to be free. Sometimes We don't want the responsibility that necessarily comes with freedom. And again, I'm not saying there aren't systems of oppression. I'm not saying there aren't things in some people's lives that make freedom a real challenge in some areas. There are limits to what we can take responsibility for. But this principle calls us to find one another in community with each other, to find those places where we can take responsibility toward greater freedom in our journeys. See, we think of this freedom and responsibility as being two principles at tug of war with each other. How free can I be, and how much responsibility do I need to take, and where's the creative tension there? And really what this principle is saying is we cannot have one without the other. You cannot have freedom without taking responsibility. And when you take responsibility for something, you create a sense of freedom. It's like we can have 100% freedom and 100% responsibility at the same time. They're not at tug of war. And the really amazing thing is that every religious tradition that human beings have created says this. They offer freedom. Every religious tradition offers some kind of freedom in our lives, some way that we can be free from something that is oppressive in our lives. But we can't do it just by being bystanders. We can't sit on the sidelines and experience the freedom that any religion offers us. We have to engage in that practice. We have to be willing to take responsibility for our own awakening. And we forget about this sometimes. We get very comfortable in the way we like things done, in the language we like to use. We get very comfortable in Unitarian Universalist churches. If I were to say to you today that God is creating a way through the wilderness for you, there are some of you that would resonate with very deeply. That language makes a lot of sense. God is creating a way through the wilderness, and you can have the confidence to take that step into the unknown because the divine is on your side. There are some of you that are trying to figure out what the heck I mean by the word God. And what wilderness am I talking about? Isn't Randy an atheist? Why are they using the word God? I don't like that word. That word has some troubling history for me. I can blame a lot of things in my life for why I don't like the word God and for why I have a particular definition of that. But until I take responsibility for how I listen and interpret and embody the language that I hear, even the vague spiritual language that I hear, I'm not going to be free from whatever those old past contexts and meanings might have done. I might have been wounded by that language in the past. There might have been people who used religious language as a weapon against me. I'll let you in on a little secret. There are people in my past who used religious language as a weapon against me. I can blame them for how I listen to it now. Or I can take responsibility for what meaning I'm going to give that language that empowers me and encourages me and strengthens me on my journey. My free and responsible search for truth and meaning is not limited by what other people have done. I'm responsible for what I do with them. Another thing we do in Unitarian Universalist churches is we say that we want freedom to express ourselves. We want a community where we can express ourselves freely and not have to worry about how we say things. Are we also willing to accept responsibility for the consequences of us just expressing ourselves however we want to? Because there are some ways of expressing ourselves that can result in us not having the kind of community we really want. If we choose to express ourselves in ways that alienate other people, if we choose to express ourselves in ways that marginalize others or demean others or insult other people, that could have some consequences. Yes, we are free to express ourselves however we want, but with that freedom comes the responsibility to create the kind of community that we want through the way that we express ourselves. We are free and responsible, and we can't have one without the other. We don't like feeling responsible, though. Maybe it feels like we do carry a lot of baggage from the past that weighs us down, and we can't really be responsible until we deal with all of that stuff. And it's tough to figure out how sometimes. That's one of the reasons it's important to have a community of people who are journeying along with us, because they can help us figure out how are we going to get rid of all of this baggage we're carrying around so that we can be responsible for a free search for truth and meaning. Sometimes we just don't want to be blamed for things. We don't want to be the ones that are on the hot seat for something. I don't want to be blamed for saying something that someone takes offense to. So I'm going to not take responsibility, because if I'm not responsible for it, you can't blame me. You know what I mean? If I'm not responsible, I can point the finger somewhere else and say, yeah, but this other place is where you should look. Don't look at me. I'm not responsible. But when I do that, I cease to be free. When I take away my own responsibility, I put chains around myself and I say, I'm not free to do this important thing. I'm not free to own this decision that I made. I'm not free to own the language that I use or the tone of voice that I use when I speak that language. I'm not free to engage in a responsible search for truth and meaning because it's somebody else's fault. Whatever went wrong, whatever happened, I want to be able to point away from myself, to blame somebody or something. Maybe we're afraid of not getting it right. You know, I was on a Zoom call recently and I said, this is a perfect metaphor for spiritual journeying, because it's messy. The first time that you're trying to run a Zoom meeting and you don't know what you're doing and you're trying your hardest to make all the bells and whistles do what they're supposed to do for that group. And it just seems like you're in the first day of school, you know, you don't know anything. And yet there are people on that call who are graceful and patient and helpful because they've been there before. And so they can help you figure out what to push to get this effect that you want. And then by the 12th time you've done it, it kind of feels natural. But that first time out of the gate, it feels like the most uncomfortable thing in the world. And we are terrified of getting things wrong for some reason, somewhere, part of that baggage we carry around. We don't want to get something wrong. We want to get it perfect right out of the gate, so we don't look bad, so we don't look foolish. Speaking of holy fools, maybe if we were willing to make a few more mistakes, we'd be able to take a little more responsibility and experience greater freedom in our searches for truth and meaning. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning means that we realize that one can't exist without the other. Freedom requires us to be responsible, and through being responsible for what we create and co-create, we embody our freedom. And not only that, we create meaning by the things that we choose to take responsibility for, the things that matter most to us. So if you just let those questions wash over you when I asked them the first time around, take a moment to reflect on them again, and maybe take some time later this week to think about it. Who or what do you blame for your life not being what you want it to be? Who or what do you blame for this congregation not being what you want it to be? Who or what do you blame for the world not being the way you want it to be? Our free and responsible search for truth and meaning may take us to some uncomfortable places, but it may begin with recognizing how free we are to co-create beloved community with one another, which is one of the reasons we need beloved community with one another. Now, some of you may think that we've been blaming coronavirus for not meeting in person, but I've got some good news for you in just a few moments. We're not going to do our COVID covenant this week, but I will share some news about next week's service. First, we're going to sing together, If Every Woman in the World. The words are in your order of service. We've had to make some tough decisions during this spike of COVID activity. Some of you have been happy that we've made those decisions. Some of you have been really frustrated by those decisions. I just want to remind you that we are trying to take all of the needs of our congregation into consideration, not just the physical needs, but the emotional and the social and the spiritual needs as well. And so we are going to be in person again next Sunday, if you want to be. If you want to stay home, we're still going to be live streaming. If you're feeling at all sick, if you've got a little tickle in your throat, if you feel like somebody that you saw on the previous Saturday was coughing a little too much for your liking, stay home. We'll live stream it to you, and I'm confident that we're going to get better and better at that, even though we are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But if you want to be here in person next Sunday, we're going to have the doors open again. We're taking some extra precautions. Our ushers and greeters are hopefully going to have our N95 masks. I have traded out my fancy, colorful UU cloth masks for a boring black N95 mask, but that's okay because it's better for me and for the people around me. And so we're making some little adjustments and changes even if it's not what we would prefer. So watch for an email this week. It's going to be in our weekly newsletter as well, and it's going to be in the Sunday morning announcement that goes out. But next, in person again, socially distanced, masked, taking all of those precautions, but with one another in the sanctuary if you would like to see you then. And I am told that I must say official benediction words. So go with confidence that you can take responsibility in your journey toward freedom. And may you remember that every journey toward truth and meaning is going to be a little uncomfortable. So may we join with one another in beloved community as we search responsibly together.
Please join me as we extinguish the chalice. The words can be found in the order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Mike, thank you, Peggy, thank you, Pete, thank you, Alan, thank you, Sharon.
And thank you, Randy.
Yeah.